Good evening, everyone. I am Moumita Dashgupta, Faculty of History Department under Prasanth Chandra Mahalanobish Mahavidyalaya. My respected participants, at this present moment of just 6 p.m. of 14 July 2020 on one-day state-level webinar on the subject Glimpses of Bengal Rural Society, the Colonial Experiences, going to be conducted by History Department and IQAC collaboration jointly under Prashant Chandra Mahalanobish Mahavidyalaya. Now, I would request my esteemed colleague, Srimati Preeti Mitro, Faculty of History Department, highlights today's webinar and specified topics on her welcome address. Preeti, please begin.
Good evening, esteemed participants. I am Preeti Mitra, faculty member, Department of History, Prashant Chandra Mahalanobish Mahavidyalaya, and I heartily welcome you all to this state-level seminar organized by the History Department of Prashant Chandra Mahalanobish Mahavidyalaya. Today's seminar is on Glimpses of Rural Society, the colonial and it aims to rethink and reconstruct the colonial experiences of Bengal by considering and underlining the importance of including hitherto marginalized experiences of different ethnographical sectors of Bengal under colonial rule with particular emphasis on Bengal Muslims. Islam not only had to compete with Hindu revivalism and Vaishnavism, it also had countered the Christian missionaries in 19th century. Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti. Now, our respected principal, Dr. Shamul Kormokar, is now offering us his keynote of our webinar. Sir, say something, please.
Good evening, everybody. I, Dr. Samuel Kormokar, Principal of Prashant Chandra Mahalanobish Mahavidyalaya. It is a great pleasure to welcome so many students, scholars, and interested persons at this inauguration ceremony for the webinar organized by the Department of History in association with IQAC of our college on glimpses of Bengal society, the colonial experiences. I express my thankful appreciation to Dr. Amit De, Professor of History Department, Center for Advanced Studies, University of Calcutta. We are grateful that he is agreed to join our webinar. I would like to express my sincere appreciation in particular to Dr. Kamala Mitro, IQAC coordinator of our college, had already organized different webinars during this pandemic situation. We received the large number of responses from teachers, students, and research scholars. It has also become clear from their feedback that the participants have been benefited by attending webinars. I take the opportunity to thank the teachers of the Department of History and organizing committee for choosing such an important topic which will help the student researcher in this field. We have entered already in a new world of virtual platform for lectures and workshops as the lockdown brought about by coronavirus. Our team are tirelessly working to enrich students with educational workshops and seminars to upgrade their knowledge. I congratulate them for their noble endeavor. Today's webinar is very interesting in the sense that India was under colonial rule from 1515 and 1947 under British rule 1858 to 1947. Colonial rule is the subjugation and presidency over the native peoples of a particular country of area, which is then claimed on behalf of sovereign state, which visited the country of India or area. Simply, colonialism is exploitation by a stronger country of weaker one, the use of weaker country's resources to strengthen and enrich the stronger country. This has been practiced by almost all empires in world history, mainly for the need for resources or living space. The British Empire was perhaps one of the most progressive empires which established a policy for extracting resources which could then be traded, and this is what empires were originally built on. The Portuguese Empire To use another example, expanded when the Portuguese seized a number of trading posts in South and Central America, including India and Africa, from 1494 to 1500. Much of these colonial empires of European nations, such as Great Britain, France, and others, were decolonized after the Second World War, although a notable exception is Portugal, who lost the Indian territories in 1962 to 465 years after the discovery of India by the Portuguese. History runs in phases from hunters-gatherers to agriculturalists to feudalism, capitalism, and colonialism, etc. Each phase must end sooner or later. Colonialism started in 15th century and lost its steam in early 20th century. During this process of gradual colonization, the colonists had been carrying out socio-economic reforms which had transformed their colonial societies in multiple ways. One manifestation of that transformation was the rise of nationalist sentiments among the educated elite of the countries, the spread of Western education and ideas, infrastructural developments, technological advancements, and a new system of governance introduced by the East India Company subcontinent and facilitated equity communities and had created a sense of unity among the Indians, thanks to all.
Momita?
Thank you, sir. We are very pleased to have your valuable and prudent delivery of speech in the matter. Now, I would request my esteemed colleague, Ms. Aditi Bose, Faculty of History Department, Prashanta Chandra Mahalanobish College, would introduce renowned personality and distinguished today's accomplished speaker, Professor Amit De, University of Calcutta. Aditi, please begin.
Thank you, Momita. Dr. Amit Dev is a professor of history, Department of History, Center for Advanced Studies, Calcutta University. He was the former head of the Department of History and present MPhil coordinator, Calcutta University. He received his PhD in history in September 1999 from the University of London for his work on the image of the Prophet in Bengali Muslim piety 1850 to 1947 and completed his doctoral research as a Commonwealth scholar being affiliated to the Department of History, Royal Holloway, University of London. His area of specialization in Islam and Islamic mysticism in medieval as well as in modern South Asia. He has published 4 books: Sufism in India in 1996, The Image of the Prophet in Bengali Muslim Piety in 2006, Islam in South Asia 2016, one co-edited book titled Between Tradition and Modernity, Aspects of Islam in Modern South Asia in 2011. Professor De is the co-editor of the Bengali academic journal Itikotha and resident editor of Indo-Iranica. The Comprehensive History of India, CHIS, has selected him as the joint editor for Volume 10. Dr. De has published over 50 articles on Islam and Islamic mysticism in academic journals. He has delivered lectures in famous institutions, national as well as internationally, such as University of Chicago, North Carolina State University, Louisiana State University, University of California, Santa Barbara, University of Roma, Heidelberg, Uppsala, Victoria University of Wellington, University of Erfurt, Shangham National University, Aligarh Muslim University, Jamia Millia Islamia, University of London, Asiatic Society Kolkata, Dhaka Asiatic Society in Poland, AAS, Toronto, Canada, Nalanda International University, Rajgir University of Kashmir, Srinagar Central for Central Asian Studies, Guwahati University. He has also chaired sessions at Victoria Memorial, ICCR Kolkata, Center for Studies in Social Sciences as well as in Makayas, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, etc. Nearly 33 scholars have completed PhD and MPhil under his supervision. At present, 8 scholars are completing PhD and MPhil under him. Apart from examining PhD theses submitted in Indian as well as in foreign universities, Professor Dey has also acted as a subject expert during selection of assistant professors, associate professors. He is also a visiting professor in in Northeastern Hill University, NEHU, as well as in Vishwabharati, West Bengal, India. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Amit sir today, who was my professor during my MPhil years. Dr. Dey, I formally welcome you on behalf of my college as well as on behalf of my colleagues to deliver today's lecture. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi, for a very generous introduction. Respected Dr. Shamal Karmakar, Principal of Prashanta Chandra Mahalanobish Mahavidyalaya College, and also very enthusiastic teachers in the history department, Aditi, Preeti, Momita, and also the IQSC department of the college, who worked very hard to organize a seminar of this nature through webinar. It gives me immense pleasure to share my ideas on rural Bengal society in the colonial period. This is related to my research interest, and also this is a relevant topic because it enables us to understand the nature of colonial rule and how the people of Bengal, particularly the people of rural Bengal, responded to colonial rule. Actually, I shall try to go beyond archives today, because the archives, the colonial archives, it's a repository of elite sources. Though some scholars like Gunal Sajarov would say that if you carefully study the archival materials, you can listen to the voice of the people as well. I'm not elaborating; that is possible perhaps. But today, if you go beyond archives and if you try to explore some unconventional sources, I think you can have a comprehensive idea about rural Bengal society. So our exercise will be related to that sort of an endeavor. Now, actually, in the concluding section, I will again have occasions to come back to some points that I will be raising as I proceed. For example, if you see the researches on colonial Bengal, if you see the expertise on colonial Bengal, you will find that the majority of the historians mainly focused on the urban space of Bengal, mainly focused on Bengali Buddhijivi. Actually, majority of the Bengali-speaking people, they live in the countryside, even today. And also a large section of that population, they subscribe to Islam as a religion. And Islam, I use the term S with Islam because just like any other religion, it is heterogeneous, as you will discover. And I have certain conclusions that I will mention while concluding my lecture. But now let us proceed, because there's a time constraint which has been inflicted on me, because the organizers are aware that I am a talkative person. I can carry on and on if I get the opportunity. So they have said that I can speak for half an hour and then there can be interactive session. So I agree with this arrangement very much. So it is very interesting because throughout the Islamic world, there are oral transmission of knowledge in the form of folk songs. Folk songs would not be confined to Bengal. Throughout the Islamic world, you will find folk songs. But one interesting aspect that I will keep you thinking, and then you would find that folk song was playing a very crucial role in South Asian history, particularly in the context, though I am confining my focus to Bengal, but particularly in the context of Mughal decline, folk songs, this is my argument, one of my arguments, that folk song played a very crucial role in the context of Mughal decline. So I will come back to that during the concluding section of my speech. But I will keep you thinking how a folk song can be very relevant for our understanding of Mughal decline, for our understanding of the challenges faced by classical culture, the Persianate culture. Folk song was playing a very crucial role. Generally, we have a tendency to discuss folk song only in the rural milieu. But I will just ask you to have a larger canvas so that we understand rural Bengal society in a more comprehensive manner. I may not have the opportunity to deal with all sorts of folk songs within this half an hour, but I will definitively highlight some of the major folk songs dealing with some major issues that engulf colonial Bengal, particularly during the last 100 years of colonial rule. But I will be mainly speaking English, but I will entertain questions in Bengali because I gather the information that some of the participants are from outside Bengal. So for their convenience, I will be speaking English. I will be receiving questions both in Bengali and English. So I will have the opportunity to speak Bengali as well during the interactive session. But for the time being, since the time constraint is there, I'll be mainly speaking English. Now, if you look at Persianate folk tradition or Arabic folk tradition, for example, I will give you only one or two examples. The Prophet Muhammad is imagined as a caravan leader, Mire Karwa or caravan leader. Now, this is a very classical concept, Sufi concept. My argument is that folk tradition also played a crucial role so far as sustenance of this classical concept is concerned. So what sort of a role folk tradition in Bengal was playing by sustaining such a classical symbol, such a classical tradition? This is an intriguing discussion that you have to participate and you have to listen to. Prophet Muhammad in Bengal countryside is not necessarily imagined as a caravan leader. As you can imagine, there is no desert in colonial Bengal or in Bengal in general, but you have a riverine Bengal. Bengal is very much riverine. So the caravan leader is getting replaced by the boatman prophet here. This is the imaginative faculty of the folk poet, that he is replacing very quickly the caravan leader with a boatman prophet or Sujon Kandari prophet. Prophet is becoming Sujon Kandari in the imagination of the folk poets. This is very much important. Now, this boatman has to be initiated just like the caravan leader, who will take the soul safely from one side of the desert to another, just like from one shore to another shore in riverine Bengal. This is important. This sort of folk songs is very important if you try to study the identity formation process of the Bengal Muslims. And I am not only speaking about the Bengali Muslims, because these Baul songs, these Jari songs, these Maijbhandari songs were not exclusively addressed to the Muslim audience. They had also Hindu and Vaishnava audience. This is, and also Buddhist audience. This is very much important, very much significant. And they were also encountering the Christian missionaries. So this multi-religious background to be kept in mind when you try to understand rural Bengal. Now, as I have already mentioned, that there are various forms of folk songs, but today we shall confine our focus to Baul songs. We shall confine our focus to Jari songs and Maijbhandari songs. I may not have the opportunity to deal with other forms of folk songs like Mehli Geet, like Bishti Dakar Gan or Rain song and Day Laborers song, etc. because of the time constraint. But during the interactive session, if you just express your curiosity, I will be delighted to respond to your queries. Now, the Bauls of Bengal belong to a community of mendicant singers known for their liberal attitude to all religions. This is one important dimension to which I draw your attention, because I have earlier mentioned that there was a Persianate culture which was sustained by the Mughal Empire. But after the decline of the Mughal Empire, after the replacement of Persian with English as a language, as an official language, this Persianate culture suffered a jolt. Under such circumstances, my argument was that the rural folk singers tried to sustain some aspects of this very liberal, humane Persianate tradition. And there is one example. The liberal attitude of the folk singers can be compared with the eclectic attitude of the Persianate culture. Elite people like Darashuko, Akbar and various other personalities in the Mughal Empire. But this time you don't have such royalties, royal personalities. You have the folk singers, the folk philosophers, the folk poets who preserve that liberal attitude in various ways. That's why they are singing their songs not only for the Muslims. That's why Lalon Shah is singing Sob Loke Koy Lalon Ki Jaat Songshare. That's why Lalon has cannot be identified as a Muslim or as a Hindu or something like that. He was beyond such classification. he was a man. He was celebrating mankind. So this liberal attitude, eclectic attitude has to be appreciated if you wish to appreciate or understand the message that is being conveyed by the Baul songs. That is very much crucial. And I would argue that comparative theological studies, which had its roots in the Persianate culture, was also sharpened by Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore and later on Abul Kalam Azad. And that was also being done in the Bengal countryside. But we have largely ignored this crucial role played by the folk philosophers, the folk poets. So today I draw your attention to the contribution of these folk poets in the Bengal countryside during the colonial period. And we can learn from them, because in the 21st century, we are facing the problem of exclusivism and intolerance, as you know. Apart from Sufism, and here again I just extrapolate my argument, that is, Persianate tradition was further sustained by the folk singers, by the folk philosophers, by the folk poets. Apart from Sufism, because Sufism was something that was being sustained by the Bauls and other folk singers of Bengal. Sufism is a classical example of classical institution that was being sustained by the Bauls, because in the 19th century the empire was gone and the British were not interested to patronize Sufism. Under such circumstances, certain aspects of Sufism were being sustained by the Bauls and the Maijbandari singers, including the Jari singers. So this is my argument, that Persianate culture was being sustained by the folk philosophers, the folk intellectuals. So apart from Sufism, the Bauls were also influenced by Vaishnavism. This is their eclectic nature. However, they were neither Hindus nor Muslims and were also opposed to the caste system. Some charismatic Bauls, you can remember, they were Fakir Lalon Shah, Panju Shah, and Lalon Shah's disciple Dut Shah. The Bauls are mostly seen in the districts like Kushtia, Khulna, Pabna, Rajshahi, Faridpur, Dhaka, and Birbhum. They generally wear a kind of odd jobba, that is long flowing gown, white in color, and play a single string musical instrument made of a hollowed and dried cavity of a goat called ektara singing. This ektara is a single string instrument. This is crucial. I draw your attention to this fact that as you try to learn rural Bengal, you also have to interpret and you have to understand symbols. Understanding symbols would be very crucial for your understanding of rural Bengal society. For example, what sort of a message, even before going into any Baul song, just this very musical instrument symbolically is trying to convey a message. That is a single stringed musical instrument. It is not very expensive to procure such a musical instrument, and this is posing a challenge to Ashraf vanity. Ashraf means aristocratic Muslim who trace their origin to foreign lands. So, and the Ashraf also, they are prone to musical practices. They are musicians, or sometimes many Ashraf spend times in the Mughal court as musicians, just like the forefathers of Amjad Ali Khan and others. But they were classical Ashraf musicians. They had the money to possess a very expensive musical instrument, and the rigorous training which they received from their Ustad, that had been very expensive and rigorous and time consuming as well. So by selecting such a simple musical instrument, single stringed musical instrument, the Bauls are trying, the folk poets are trying to convey a message that even through simplicity, by celebrating simplicity, you can just put formation process, and you should not feel humiliated when you encounter an Ashraf in Bengal rural society. So this is giving a sense of self-confidence and dignity to the rural population, rural Bengal population. So this symbolism has to be understood properly. So this is actually a challenge to Ashraf hegemony. I call it de-Ashrafization process in the Bengal countryside. De-Ashrafization process in the Bengal countryside, or the plebeianization process in the Bengal countryside. This is very crucial if you have to understand the identity formation process of the peasants, folk poets, and the fishermen, and the artisans, and so on. This is very crucial. Now, British land policy and destruction of crafts industries, I don't use the term that is deindustrialization. You would understand why. I prefer the term destruction of crafts industries in rural Bengal. caused impoverishment which swelled the ranks of mendicant singers. You will find that many such mendicant singers are using the title Dewan, Dewan Hasan Raja, Dewan with their names. They were previously associated with zamindaris, but their zamindaris were gone because of the harsh British land policy. So they joined the ranks of mendicant singers like Baul. You know, this is very much important. The Bauls were not religious reformers. You have to differentiate the Bauls from religious reformers. But they fought against social inequality, hatred, and corruption through their various songs. And let us switch over to Jari songs. Jari is a kind of dirge which owes its origin to the tragic events of Modina and Karbala, leading to the deaths of Hassan, Imam, and Hussein, who were the very favorite grandsons of Prophet Muhammad, as you know. Jari is a very popular folk song. The Shia community of South Asia commemorate the events of Karbala, that is the tragic event of Karbala, where Hussein attained martyrdom in the month of Muharram by singing marsias or dirges on the deaths of Hussein and his followers. Now, marsias are usually sung in Urdu, while Jari in Bengal, this is the Bengali version of marsia, you can say, for your understanding. Jari is generally sung in Muharram in Bangladesh and parts of West Bengal. Now, both valor and pathos characterize Jari, which depicts the unparalleled heroism of Hussein and his followers on the battlefield of Karbala, and the tragic scene is connected with their death. So this is one important aspect of Jari. The word Jari has originated from the Persian word Zari, Zaridan. Z cannot be pronounced in Bengali, so Zari has been replaced with Jari, Jari. So which means lamentation. So here is another example how Persianate tradition, Persianate classical tradition, Persianate high culture is sustained by the folk poets of Bengal, the Jari poets of Bengal. Jari has still maintained its popularity among the Hindus and the Muslims alike in the and Bangladeshi countryside. Now, Jashore and Khulna, in Jashore and Khulna, Jari is not treated as a religious song. This is important. This heterogeneous nature of Jari song is very important. Jari is not recognized as a religious song in Jashore and Khulna, but they are recognized in Jashore and Khulna as seasonal song. This is the secular dimension of Jari song. It cannot be identified as a religious song out and out. Like the Baul songs, Jari also reflect the grievances of the rural population against the prevalent social and economic disparities. Jari is to be sung in a group, or to be more precise, between two contesting groups, which can create a dramatic atmosphere in village performances. So this is the distinction. Baul songs can be a solo performance, but Jari song is not a solo performance. It has to be sung in a group between two contesting groups, which can create a dramatic atmosphere in an otherwise monotonous village performance. This is very much important. Jari songs are sung to the accompaniment of dancing and musical instruments. Dancing is also allowed in Baul songs, as you know. You might remember Moner Manush. Dancing and musical instruments such as dhol, such as shenai, such as cymbal, cymbal means kortal, such as harmonium, such as tabla. Now remember, all these musical instruments are very simple musical instruments. They are not necessarily very expensive, unlike the classical instruments like shetar and sarod and so on. So this distinction has to be kept in mind. So this is a new form of identity formation, a de-Ashrafization process that is integral to the identity formation in rural Bengal during the colonial period, that you have to understand. Now let us switch over quickly to the Maij Bhandari songs. Maij Bhandari is actually the name of a place in Chittagong. They sing Marifati songs. Marifati means esoteric or mystical songs. They are mainly based in Chittagong. According to the name of the place, that is Maij Bhandar, they are known as Maij Bhandari singers. The Maij Bhandari songs of this area were known as Maij Bhandari songs. But you have to understand that they were not confined to Chittagong. They spread to other districts of Bangladesh and even came down to Dhaka to sing their songs. They had a very close linkage with the Bangali Buddhijivi, and they had a secular dimension as well. those who believe in communal harmony, those who believe in a secular society, they appreciate the Maij Bhandari songs. So Maij Bhandari song is another example. These Maij Bhandaris also emulate various Sufi silsilas or Sufi sects. So another classical dimension, classical philosophy, that is mystical esoteric philosophy, as well as Sufi institutions, Sufi silsila, they are sustained by the folk singers like the Maij Bhandari singers. This again supports my hypothesis that folk singers in the context of Mughal decline, in the context of the degeneration of the empire, in the context of 19th century, played a crucial role in the sustenance of eclectic Persianate tradition on the Indian soil. My used to grow long hair. This is crucial. I have mentioned that understanding symbol is very important. They grow long hair on their heads, which is against Sharia, as you can understand, and were fond of smoking hookah. This is a practice against Sharia, that is the canon law of Islam. Contemporary social and economic conditions were reflected in the Maij Bhandari songs. Among the religious themes, cosmogony featured prominently in these songs. Now, we shall not deal with the songs one after another. We shall rather offer a very thematic survey of the songs for a proper understanding, for a comprehensive understanding of rural Bengal society by consulting sources which would be available beyond the colonial archives, which is the repository of elite sources. Bowls of the Maij Bhandaris were singing songs on the concept of Nuri Muhammad, that is the light of Muhammad. That is again a Sufi or classical concept, which was a Persianate concept that was being sustained by folk singers, which again sustains my hypothesis that is this Persianate culture was just sustained by the folk poets of Bengal when the empire was gone. Presenting the Prophet Muhammad and his mediatorship of creation as a source of authority in rural Bengal. Why the folk singers or folk poets were looking for an authority as a source of authority? Because they were facing competition from Hindu revivalism as well, but particularly from Christian missionary activities in rural Bengal. So the Christian missionaries were putting emphasis on cosmogonical theory, that is Srishti Tattva or creation theory. So that's why to encounter their preaching, the bowls and the folk singers were also putting emphasis on cosmogonical theory within Islam. And that brings them closer to Sufi philosophy of Nur Muhammadi. That is very much important, or the light of Muhammad. In this way, they sustained the esoteric aspect of Sufi tradition, classical Persianate tradition in rural Bengal. So this is one of the paradoxes that is very important. A paradox because Persianate culture is high classical Islamic culture, Islamic high tradition, but folk tradition to be popular tradition. But here the popular tradition is sustained Islamic high tradition or the Persianate tradition. So this paradox also intrigued me for several decades and brought me to this sort of a survey. And again, Lalon Shah was singing, I am translating it into English, the sky, the earth and the wind together with water are all born of his luminous spirit. Luminous spirit means Nur Muhammadi, the light of Muhammad, as I mentioned earlier. So in this way, this is an example, this is a demonstration how Persianate tradition, esoteric tradition, Sufi tradition was being sustained by folk singers. So this is the converging point between Persianate tradition, Islamic high tradition, and Islamic folk tradition, or the so-called Islamic little tradition, as Ashim Rai would use this term. In a Jari song, this is very interesting Jari. Gabriel, as you know, in Islam, he is known as Jibril. Gabriel was annoyed to find that Fatima was addressing Gabriel as Choto Chacha. So then they resolved this debate after appearing before the Prophet Muhammad and said that I am very annoyed. Gabriel is saying that I am very annoyed that your daughter is addressing me as Choto Chacha, but I should be Bol Chacha because I am senior to you. Then the Prophet Muhammad said, okay, Gabriel, when you were born, did you see anything on the horizon? Then the Gabriel said, yes, I saw a starry light. Then the Prophet responded by saying that I was that starry light. That is Nur Muhammad. So here the Prophet is just demonstrating its antiquity as compared to Gabriel. That is, he is trying to prove that he was even senior to Gabriel. Otherwise, Gabriel would not have seen Nur Muhammad at the time of his birth. So, in this way, a sort of competitive spirituality. This is again important. Generally, historians argue that the Bauls represented or the Jari singers represented unalloyed syncretism, Shamonnoybad, unalloyed syncretism in the countryside. My argument is that unalloyed syncretism was not there. Syncretism was there, Shamonnoybad was there, but alongside Shamonnoybad, there was competitive spirituality, প্রতিযোগিতামূলক আধ্যাত্মিকতা. That has to be understood for a proper understanding of rural society, multifaceted rural society. This is very much interesting that if you look at the Mahesh singers of Chittagong, Mahesh singers, they have a herd of buffaloes. Now you can compare them with cowherd Krishna or shepherd prophets. Moses and Jesus, they were shepherds. But you will not have shepherd in Chittagong, but in Chittagong you will have herd of buffaloes. So Mahesh priests, they used to look after buffaloes just like Krishna shepherd prophets. This is very interesting. So this sort of symbolism is a process of legitimizing the local priest. So here I draw your attention between local symbols of religion and the universal symbols of religion. Prophet is an universal symbol of Islam, universal symbol of religion. But here the local spirit is also competing with that universal symbol. Here the local symbol is being legitimized, is being universalized by getting compared with shepherd prophets who were the universal symbols of religion, shepherd Moses and shepherd Jesus. So this is the way how the image of a particular local peer of Chittagong is getting enhanced in the spiritual hierarchy of prophets, in the spiritual hierarchy of spiritual leaders. This is very important. You have to understand that this is integral to the identity formation process of the Bengali speaking people in the countryside during the colonial period. You have to understand that. And again, I'm not delving deep into that. These folk singers, including the Mahesh and Lalon Shah, they are playing with Arabic letters, you know. They are playing with Arabic letters. For example, I'm not delving deep into that. It's a little bit difficult without PowerPoint presentation. I don't want to go into that. Like Ahmad was becoming Ahad. Ahmad is one of the names of the Prophet. He is becoming Ahad because of this very manipulative use of letter symbolism. Ahmad is becoming Ahad. That is, there is no distinction between man and God. The distinction is caused only by a thin veil. If you remove that thin veil, man is identified with God, or man is united with God. This is a very Sufi concept, very much important. It is also related to Upanishadic Advaitavad. This is the root of comparative theological study. That is again a classical practice popularized by Vivekananda, popularized by Gandhi and Tagore, and also by these folk singers of the countryside. That you have to understand. And now again, there is another Mahesh song. It is very interesting. I'm just translating the song and then just sharing the Bengali couplet with you. Jalali Jamali Khela Bekhelche Boshe Malik Maula Lukaiya Roi. Follow the words very carefully. The divine light is a reflection of divine majesty. That is Jalal. It's a Persian Arabic word, you know, Arabic word. It's a classical word being used by the folk singer in Bengal countryside. And the divine beauty is Jamal. Divine beauty is Jamal. It is again an Arabic word used in Persian as well. So these classical words are being used frequently by the folk singers, Mahesh singers. This is the sharing of Persianate culture, sharing of high Islamic tradition. This is very much important. When the empire is gone, this sort of Persianate, eclectic, esoteric tradition was being sustained by the Bengali folk singers. So this is very much important. In the concluding section, I will have occasions to come back to this issue once again. However, I cannot see the reality of God. So this is a continuous, perennial quest for God, quest for the unknown. But these sort of symbols are being used to understand, to define God. But God cannot be defined. This is the understanding of the very esoteric folk singer in rural Bengal. Now, there is also intercessory role of the Sufis that is being used by the folk singers. Now you will remember that in New Testament, this intercessory role of Jesus also figures very prominently. This is very much important. So this confirms that they had to encounter the Christian missionary preachers. So they used similar terminologies so that they can successfully encounter the challenges being posed by the Christian missionaries in the Bengal countryside, like in Nodia. In Nodia, church missionary societies there in Krishnanagar. So that confirms the presence of missionaries in the Bengal countryside. So the bouts are also very popular in Nodia. Folk singers are very popular in Nodia. So this is the convergence of different ideas that is very much important. So the worried and pensive Jahid says that the day of judgment will be troublesome. If you want to cross the bridge safely, and look for an advocate now. Advocate, Jesus is portrayed as an advocate, and here Prophet Muhammad is also being portrayed as an advocate. Lalon sings on another occasion, if you choose the Prophet as your helmsman, your boat will not sink in the storm. The boat of faith is propelled by love and moves day and night without wind. So this is an esoteric presentation of something which tries to legitimize the Prophet in the Bengal countryside. In this way, they tried to encounter the challenge that was being posed by the preaching of the Christian missionaries in the Bengal countryside during the colonial period, particularly the 19th century, which is known as the century of religious competition. So this is one important dimension. Now time is taking out for me. I have to wind up my discussion, but I will wind up my discussion by citing only one rain song that is very much crucial. The empowerment of Fatima, the beloved daughter of the Prophet, is seen here. Now, Fatima never visited Bengal, but here is an effort on the part of the folk way to popularize folk symbol, folk identity, folk existence, folk quest for identity by incorporating Fatima within Bengali Muslim society. Particularly prevalent in the Bengal countryside. So Fatima is becoming an integral part of Bengali Muslim identity here. So this is the provincialization of the universal symbol of Islam. Fatima is a universal symbol of Islam that is getting provincialized by the imagination of folk poet. That's why Fatima is getting identified with Bengali Muslim society, not only Bengali Muslim society. This is interesting to note that the Jari songs, they start with Saraswati Bandana and also Fatima Bandana. Now, historically, Fatima was not an accomplished musician, but Saraswati is imagined as an accomplished musician. Bina Badonkari Saraswati amra jani. So here Fatima is being projected as an accomplished musician, and Fatima and Saraswati simultaneously they are entreated before launching a Jari song in the rural environment of Bengal. This is very crucial. So Fatima is emerging as the empowered female deity so far as Bengali Muslim society is concerned. So Kali Ghate Kali Ma, Hai Ali, Hai Fatima. Fatima is becoming important. So a rain song is like that. I re Megh Rani, Thang Dhui Dhui Phela Pani, Bibi Fatima Khoje Pani, Allah Tui Dele Pani. So this is the folk song. Fatima is being entreated. Intercessory role of Fatima alongside the Prophet Muhammad is getting recognized here. Now, in the 18th century, Ramprasadi songs became popular, and there we find an empowered female deity goddess Kali. So when the Hindus lost political power, they sought self-confidence by empowering female deity Kali. So the Andar Mahal, the inner circle, female quarter, Zenana, was left untouched by British presence. So the regeneration of Hindu society started in the Andal Mahal, in the Thakur Ghar, where the empowered female deity goddess Kali was there. So goddess Kali of Ram supposed to provide self-confidence and dignity to the subjugated Hindu population. Muslims were not slow to discover their goddess Kali. Though deification is not allowed in Islam, but folk poets are very imaginative. Their goddess Kali emerged in the form of Fatima. So empowered image of Fatima emerges in Bengal. Even today in Bengal countryside, you will find Fatima Than, Ma Barkotet Than or Fatima Than in Bengal. Though Fatima never visited India, as I have mentioned. This is provincialization of the universal symbol of Islam. In this way, this provincialization process, this tension between universal and local symbols of Islam should be kept in mind if you have to understand the identity formation of the Bengali-speaking people. Now I conclude. So colonial Bengal is not confined to Bengali Buddhijeevi of Calcutta. Colonial Bengal is larger than the urban space. Colonial epicenter of colonial Bengal can be discovered even in the countryside. That's why in Hrithik Ghatak film you will find in Kolkata some Baul migrants who are singing অনেক অনেক ঘুরিয়া শেষে আইলাম রে কলকাতা রকম সকম দেখা আমার ঘুইরা গেছে মাথা constant traveling between cities and the rural space must be properly understood. Majority of the population stay in the rural space. Now the poets of the folk philosophers of the Bengal countryside, they were not inferior to the Bengali Buddhijeevi domiciled in Kolkata. Even Raja Rammon did not dare to challenge establishment, unlike the case of Lalon Shah. Hundreds of thousands of people knew Bulle Shah of Punjab or Lalon Shah of Bengal. But Rammon Roy and Sir Soyed Ahmed Khan had very few followers during their lifetime. This has to be understood. This is one of my concluding remarks. Another point is that you have to go beyond colonial archives to understand rural Bengal society. You have to understand the pattern of oral transmission of knowledge through these sort of folk songs. Thirdly, you have to understand that we have to challenge von Grunebaum's theory, who said that Islam is basically an urban religion which flourishes around the Qasba, small town, bazaar, and the mosque. But here you have seen that Islam can flourish with all its vitality even in a rural environment. Fourthly, we have seen that aspects of Persianate culture or Islamic high tradition can and eclecticism can prevail in folk philosophical understanding of the world. This is very much important. You have to understand this paradox. Persianate culture is apparently opposed to folk tradition, but folk tradition, when the empire was gone, played a crucial role in the sustenance of that Persianate tradition. And fifthly, last but not the least, reinterpretation of symbols would be very important to understand rural society. Levi-Strauss has said social history remains incomplete if you do not interpret the symbols. So today we made an humble effort to understand the symbols in the context of Bengal rural society under the colonial regime. I thank you everyone for your patience. You have listened to me, and now I shall listen to your questions, if any. Would be delighted to respond to your queries. Thank you very much. Thank you.
অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ স্যার আপনাকে আর সমস্ত সকল পার্টিসিপেন্টদের কাছে কলেজের তরফ থেকে ডিপার্টমেন্টের তরফ থেকে অর্গানাইজিং কমিটির তরফ থেকে আগেই ক্ষমা চেয়ে নিচ্ছি। আসলে নেটওয়ার্কের প্রবলেমটা তো আর কারোর হাতে থাকে না, এটা অটোমেটিক হয়ে যায়। তথাপি বলছে ডিয়ার পার্টিসিপেন্টস, as long yet you have been listening to the invaluable as well super speech delivered by Professor Amit Dey on the respective topic for the sake of participants, so that they could be benefited and prospered to overcome their hurdles of academic line. So we are much grateful to you for your honorable presence within us and being glorified with your outstanding lecture. And in the meantime, a lot of participants place their question in the chat box for your kind feedback in short. Then sir, may I start? Sir? Hello?
Yes, please. Yes. Yes.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Shashwati Bhattacharya, what were the role of the Sufis in mobilizing the people of rural India against the British colonial rule? Part 1 number question. Part 2, what was their position during the time of Caliphate movement as they had a great control over the peasant sections of the century?
That's a very interesting question. Should I respond in English or Bangla? English.
As you wish, sir.
Okay. As a question, actually, in the anti-colonial struggle, the Sufis could not play a major role because by the end of the 19th century, you will find that the Sufi movement became an emancipated movement, a very weakened staff. They became very weak in the late 19th century. So they were not in a position to offer leadership. So leadership passed into the hands of the ulama during the Khilafat movement. But Sufis played a crucial role in popularizing the local symbols of Islam, popularizing the image of Murshid, popularizing Hindu-Muslim amity. For example, during the Swadeshi movement, Jari songs were used by the nationalist leaders because they believed that by using Jari songs, for example, in Borishal, Ashwini Kumar Datta used the mystically oriented Jari songs to bring the Hindus and Muslims closer to each other. So I would argue that the Sufis did not play a very direct role during the anti-colonial struggle in India. Definitely in some countries they played a very direct role, like in Northern Africa, they played a very crucial role, but the Indian situation was different. So they played a unique role in Indian society. For example, they played a crucial role in challenging the two-nation theory. Rabindranath Tagore, Maulana Azad, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan and Gandhi challenged two-nation theory, and Indian nationalist historians and Marxist historians challenged two-nation theory by citing the harmonious example of the Sufi saints. The Sufi role was not very direct, but indirectly Sufi contribution, Sufi legacy had been used by the historians as well as the thinkers, poets and politicians during the nationalist struggle to unify the Indian population. Thank you for your query. If there is any other query.
Thank you so much, sir, for your great explanation. Poulomi Dash question করেছে, in the context of 19th century Islamic revivalism, whether the quest of Islam in the conceptualization of rural intelligence was connected mainstream movement of political elite in the cities.
Okay, as far as I understand the question, Poulomi, during the first half of the 19th century, Islamic revivalism played a very crucial role. And you have to understand that they had played a very violent anti-British role. For that, they had to be crushed. I don't want to go into details. You know, in 1857-58 rebellion and later on, these Wahhabis were crushed by the British. So this was an example of violent resistance to the British. So they were crushed. So in the first half of 19th century Bengal, you see the predominance of Islamic revivalism in the form of Faraizi and Wahhabi violence. But they were crushed. But in spite of that, in the second half of the 19th century, you are right, in the urban pockets of Kolkata and other places of India, these revivalist movements played a crucial role. They could not afford to play a violent role against the British because the Muslim society by and large understood that violent resistance against the British will not work. But they took inspiration from these Wahhabis and Faraizis in their reformation of society, in rehabilitation of Puritanism within Islam, rehabilitation of basic tenets of Islam within Muslim society. Distinct community identity should be established. So all these examples and all these influences came from the Wahhabis and the Faraizis. But the violent aspect of their resistance had been dropped by the intelligentsia in the second half of the 19th century. So yes, initially Wahhabi Faraizi movements, Islamic revivalism engulfed the countryside, but later on their violent aspect of their resistance had been dropped by the Muslim intelligentsia, but the Muslim intelligentsia domiciled in the urban space were indirectly influenced by their activities. For example, if you look at the name, of the movement, Tariqa-i-Mahmudiyya were very fluid during the first half of the 19th century. Fluid means that they were living in the borderland of Hinduism and Islam. So a distinct community identity had to be created, and in that case, they were greatly influenced by the Wahhabis and the Farizis. Even the journalist Akram Khan was influenced by the Wahhabis to a great extent of the Ahle Hadith group. So you are right. So in this way, the message of the Islamic revivalist acted as a liaison between rural and urban pockets of colonial India. Thank you for your very intriguing question, Polomi. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for your great explanation. Dr. Polomi Mitra, Bijoy Krishna Girls College থেকে উনি ম্যাম প্রশ্ন করেছেন, the deification of Bibi Fatima is very important. Did it anywhere had any impact on the status of Bengali Muslim?
Interesting question, you know. For that, I will divide the narrative into two parts. That is to respond to your question, Korobidi, very important question. I would say that you have to understand, you have to approach Bengali Muslim society by dividing into two categories, urban space and rural space. It is very interesting that Fatima became very popular in the Bengal countryside among the Muslims. But in urban space, images like Aisha and Khadija became popular because Aisha and Khadija were more close to scriptural Islam, whereas Fatima was closer to mystical Islam. Damadam Mas Kalandar Alisha Alida Paila number. This is a Qawwali song in a film. You know, Ali is the husband of Fatima. So Ali and Fatima were very popular in the countryside, and Aisha and Khadija both were the wives of the Prophet. They were very popular in the urban space because of their proclivity to scriptural Islam. You can probably understand why this. We can discuss this also later. But Fatima was actually played a significant role in providing self-confidence to the rural population. But again, this is a very paradoxical issue. In the urban space, you will find biographies of the Prophet because literacy rate is higher in the urban space. So biographies of the Prophet will be very quickly read in the urban space, more easily available in the urban space. There, Fatima sometimes is appearing as a competitor, I would say, of Aisha and Khadija, because Aisha and Khadija were the representatives of scriptural Islam. Fatima is emerging as the repository of mystical knowledge within Islam in the urban space. So still in the urban space, as you know, there is a tussle going on between scriptural Islam and mystical Islam, which is continuing even today. So I would say that Fatima is losing ground to Khadija and Aisha to some extent. It is my observation. I may be wrong. You can correct me. But her appeal is more prominent, more visible in the rural space in the Bengal countryside. So his Fatima's son, Fatima or Ma Barkat means auspicious mother. Mangolmoyi Ma or auspicious mother would be readily found in the countryside rather than in the urban space. In the urban space, probably Fatima is facing stiff competition from Khadija and Aisha. So that's why I use the term Islams with S. Just like any other religion, it's a heterogeneous religion with different layers. Muslims do not speak in one voice. They speak in mystical voice, they speak in scriptural voice, they speak in passionate voice, and so on. I think I could respond to some aspects of your query. Korobidi.
Thank you, sir. Uttam Sharma chat box এ question রেখেছেন উনি, how the British treated the folk song of Bengal, because that song take a role to unity in Hindu Muslim.
That's a great question. Actually, you know, that's why I try to draw a differentiation between colonial archives and a very creative archive that we are creating for the time being. What is the creative archive? Creative archive is the archive where you will find folk songs like that what you have used in today's lecture. In the colonial archives, they were not very much interested in this sort of harmonious folk songs, you know. In the colonial archives, you will find records left behind by British officials or by Indian zamindars or by Indian officers or by British magistrates, and you will find the memoirs of great people. So, in the colonial archives, you will find great people, established people, recognized people. The voices of the commoners can hardly be heard in that sort of an archives. Now, according to Gunel Sedelroff, I have mentioned that if you carefully search the colonial archives, you will also find popular voice. For example, sometimes people had been used either as convicts or as witness during litigational activities. So if you carefully listen to their voice, you can also listen to the voice of the people you will find the voice of the people in archives. But the British were not interested in this sort of folk songs, as you know, because on the policy of divide and rule, and later on alongside divide and rule another policy emerged that you know that I have mentioned, that is the two nation theory. So along divide and rule policy was already there, launched by the colonial masters, and then they were further bolstered by the introduction of two nation theory. So these people would not be interested in this sort of harmonizing folk songs, as you know. So they were not keen, but there could be researchers who would show interest in this sort of folk songs, but that would happen in the aftermath of India's independence. You will know many Western scholars from Atlantic West, they came to India and carried out research on these folk songs. There could be some exceptions, of course, because by British can be divided into two categories, just like to follow Rabindranath Tagore. Good British and bad British, who was a great friend of Tagore, and bad British was like Lord Curzon, who was instrumental behind the vivisection of Bengal, as you know. So bad British and good British. Good British would be interested in this sort of folk traditions like Charles Field Andrews, but they were not the representatives of colonial authorities. So we have to differentiate between the colonial British and non-colonial British. Non-colonial British would be interested in this sort of folk songs, as I have mentioned. Many Christian missionaries who were not working under the hegemony of colonial authorities showed interest in this sort of folk songs. So you have to distinguish between colonial elite and non-colonial elite if you think about the British presence in the Bengal countryside. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, sir. Our last question, Faizun Akhtar লিখেছেন, which Sufi silsila left footprints more prominently in rural Bengal? Is there any political importance in the context of rural Bengal?
Please, could you repeat the question? First line of the question.
Which Sufi silsila left footprints more prominently in rural Bengal?
Oh. Okay, it's a very good question. Very good question. Now, if you have to study that, you have to take a long canvas. Now, if you just focus your attention to colonial Bengal, you will not get a comprehensive picture about the activities of the Sufis in rural Bengal. So my suggestion would be that you take the entire 19th and 20th centuries for a proper understanding of the role played by Sufis in the Bengal countryside. Now, I would suggest that several Sufi orders played a crucial role in the Bengal countryside. Probably the Chishti Sufis were the more popular, because you know, in Gaur and Pandua, Noor-e-Kutub Alam, etc., Alaul Haq, they were all Chishti Sufis. They were extremely popular. This Malda-based Sufi, Chishti Sufis were extremely popular. But you have to take undivided Bengal into consideration. For example, in some parts of Borishal or in Faridpur, you will also find that Naqshbandi Sufis also made inroads. But these Naqshbandi Sufis became more popular in the post-colonial period. Chishti Sufis were there. I am not saying that the Chishti Sufis were not there. but Chishti Sufis were transformed in the post-independence period. I'm not going deep into that. So if you compare silsila-wise, I would say that the Chistis were more prominent, but the Naqshbandis were also very much instrumental. Now you may ask me this question: how can you prove that the Chistis were so popular? Now remember, I have mentioned the Bauls, the Maij Bhandaris, the Jari singers I have mentioned today. Now music is acceptable to the Chisti Sufis, and the Bauls actually trace their genealogical origin from the Chistis. Oh, but they have many differences with the Chistis as well, and that is quite common. Yeah. So all these folk singers like music and dance. Rabindranath Tagore was in favor of music and dance. Gandhi was in favor of music. So music and dance posed a challenge to hegemonic orthodoxy. Remember that. Orthodox elements do not like music and dance, but Rabindranath Tagore, Gandhi, they liked music and dance. Lalon Shah, they liked music and dance. So this was a challenge, symbolic challenge to hegemonic orthodoxy, that is music and dance. And the Chistis liked music and dance. So the Chistis were very popular among the Bauls, among the Maij Bhandaris, among the Jaris, and all those who were instrumental in sustaining the folk songs in the Bengal countryside. But I would say that you also have to take into consideration the prevalence of other Sufi silsilas like the Suravardis. Suravardis are very important also. For example, Shah Jalal of Sylhet, he was a Suravardi. Suravardis did not like music. Naqshbandis did not like music. Naqshbandis and Suravardis were close to political power and distanced from music. But the Chistis were distanced from political power and were close to music. But after independence, when Ershad was here, the Chistis were functioning not in conformity with their basic philosophy, that is maintaining a distance from political power. Rather, they moved closer to political power because they understood that under new challenges with Islamic revivalism, with the loss of political patronage, if they do not work hand in glove with the political power, that is General Ershad, they will lose their prominence in Bengali society, particularly in the Bengal countryside. So there was a metamorphosis of Chisti attitude towards political power and also wealth that you can understand. But so far as music is concerned, the Chistis played a crucial role in popularizing the folk music, or at least they acted as a great inspiration behind this sort of musical activities in Bengal. So thank you for your very enlightened question. Any other? I think I have answered most of the questions.
Sir, actually, shortage of time, sir. May I conclude the interactive session? Please give your permission.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. We are extremely sorry to say that due to shortage of time, we are not in a position to give you answer of all the questions. Now, our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Kamala Mitro, conveys vote of thanks to conclude the program.
Good evening. On behalf of IQAC, I take the opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to our principal, Dr. Shamul Karmakar, for his continuous support to organize such a webinar. Thank you, sir, for your guidance and support. On behalf of organizing committee, I express my heartiest gratitude to our honorable speaker, Professor Amit Dey, for his interesting and informative lecture. I am thankful to him for his kind acceptance of our invitation, despite of his busy schedule. This is an absolute pleasure and honor for us to host him. Thank you, sir, once again. I express my thankfulness to our dear participants who have turned up in such a great number, without whose cooperation this webinar was not possible. My special thanks is for our entire technical team, faculties of our computer science department, Suparna Dey, Samrat Shur, and Deepmala Chakraborty, who are supporting us from the very first day with their sincere effort. I am also thankful to the faculties of the History Department, Kriti Mitro, Aditi Bose, and Bhumita Dasgupta for organizing such a beautiful webinar. Hope you have enjoyed the session well and enriched yourself with beautiful information. And finally, thank you all. Thank you, Momita.
Thank you, Di. Many thanks to all the participants for participating in our webinar. This is the end of our webinar today. Feedback link send respective group. Please check that.
Thank you, sir.